And good evening, everybody. I'm Ann Vandersteel, and welcome to Steel News. You are entering the war zone as we get the countdown closer to November 5th. This time, America, this really is the most important election. I don't think there's anything that we can do to come back if it does not go the way we need it to go at this point to save the republic. Tonight, I have the pleasure to have on the show again Marley HORNIK. She's the founder of United Sovereign Americans, a conservative group behind a concerted effort to remove voters from voting rolls across the country, but to prove that there's civil rights being violated across the board. Frankly, they filed several lawsuits, most recently here in Florida, targeting the voter rolls and other areas. And this is the second such lawsuit this group has filed this month. And in the lawsuit that was filed on August 19th, the United Sovereign Americans, along with a host of co-plaintiffs, including Citizens Defending Freedom, a specific voter, and 8 Republican candidates running in the upcoming general election, they alleged that the state here in Florida, my home state, which is central to actually getting Donald Trump across the finish line, or any presidential candidate for that matter across the finish line, is violating the National Voter Registration Act and a state law by actually failing to remove illegal and ineligible voters from its voter rolls. The group claims to have obtained information proving that there were more than 63 actual voting system errors in the entire ballot tabulation for ballots cast in the 2022 election in Florida that actually led to hundreds of thousands of potential errors in the 2022 general election. The complaint also alleges that there was a mass number of illegal votes cast because of duplicate voter registrations, inactive status, and a host and myriad of other reasons. The lawsuit also argues that the state is violating the Help America Vote Act because it actually exceeds the acceptable federal error rate in a state's voter systems, that being one error in every 125,000 votes. Joining me right now is Marley HORNIK with United Sovereign Americans. Marley, great to have you back again. Thank you, as always, for joining us here on Steel News.
It's great to be with you again, Ann. Thanks so much for giving attention to this critical litigation effort that United Sovereign Americans has launched, not only in Florida, but also now in Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. We are a nonpartisan organization just focusing on making sure that the election results in the 2024 general election are trustworthy for every American, regardless of political affiliation.
You know, just that sentence alone, Marley, seems so germane to what our country is about. It's not a left or right issue. It's a human rights. It's our right to express who we would like to represent us. This is what our Constitution is founded on. It seems so simple, yet you're seeing red flags being thrown down on the field by Democrats right now, saying they don't want anybody doing this kind of work at all. They're afraid this is going to jeopardize the largest voter fraud effort they have going. This is Joe Biden's words, per se. Tell me, the political headwinds that you've been challenged with, along with just raising the money to get these lawsuits over the finish line and into court, has been, I would say, Herculean at this point. Are you facing more challenges raising money, or are you facing more challenges from the establishment and left that is trying to prevent you from filing lawsuits like this?
Those two issues go hand in hand, I'm sorry to say. And it's not a matter of what color shirt anyone is wearing. Really, it has to do with their ultimate fealty to the principle of representative government at the heart, as you say, of the American system. It's the third sentence of the United States Constitution. The people of the several states shall choose their representatives. So when we have these problems where the election results as a matter of law are unreliable according to what Congress laid out as requirement, a minimum necessary and proper standard for election reliability, no one has certainty. And that fundamentally debrides our system, and it leaves the American people very susceptible to information warfare, to division and rancor, and to, frankly, the beginning seeds of actual hatred based on political ideology that may or may not actually be true. It's just being pushed so hard in the media.
Well, again, the media has always been the fourth branch of this corrupt government, so there's no surprises there, which is why we do what we do over here, along with a host of my colleagues out there in new media land. So let's go through the technicals of this lawsuit, because again, I think the principles are very simple, but they cannot be overstated enough, because we need to drill this into the heads. I'm getting feedback from people in and around the Trump campaign that don't believe there's any fraud that we have to worry about, that President Trump is going to garner enough votes to overcome any potential fraud out there. Well, I can say from where I've sat at Operation Burning Edge, frankly, Marley, and seen the stream of millions of illegals coming in. I've spoken to whistleblowers in the IRS who tell me they are giving millions of illegals ITIN numbers. And of course, we know they're getting Social Security numbers in an expedited fashion. This is recipe for disaster, because this makes them eligible to vote in many instances. So I challenge the thought that we don't have voter fraud as a real threat using the illegal voters in this country. Get my audience up to speed on the technicals of what you're addressing specifically in this lawsuit, particularly here in Florida, which has seen a lot of illegals dropped in as of late.
Sure. And I want to, before we get into the specific details, I want to address this issue a little bit kind of head on and a little bit from the flanks, because you see, a lot of people are very focused on this issue, and understandably and rightfully so, about non-citizens getting access to the ballot. And that's one kind of invalid vote that can drown out valid votes of eligible citizen voters. The point I want to bring up is that the states themselves, under the 14th Amendment in the second section, they have two responsibilities fundamentally regarding elections. On the one hand, they have to prevent denial of the vote to any citizen who does have the legal requirements to participate. And I think this is largely where the left or the progressives have focused their efforts, is on preventing denial of the vote. But the states also have a responsibility to prevent dilution of the vote. And the Supreme Court views these two civil rights injuries as equal. So it's unfair and incorrect. It's legally invalid as a process to only focus on preventing denial of the vote. They have to protect the integrity of each vote that is cast and counted. That's where we get into these particular arguments. And what they're saying is, hey, if someone comes up to vote, we don't really have to know who they are. Our job is to hand them a ballot. And that couldn't be more incorrect under the law. Now, without even going into the issue of citizens or non-citizens voting, which frankly is very challenging for citizen organizations and nonprofit organizations to challenge, because we don't get that information. Citizenship is considered sensitive, protected information. So we can't, for example, query the Florida voter rolls for this issue. The state sure can, but we can't. But without that, United Sovereign Americans' lawsuit against Secretary of State Cord Byrd and Attorney General Ashley Moody and the Attorney General of the United States of America, Merrick Garland, alleges that there are, regardless of citizenship status, over 500,000 apparently invalid or illegal registration records inside of the statewide voter registration list that cast over 200,000 votes in the 2022 midterm. This is exactly what that provision in the 14th Amendment is designed to prevent: dilution of the vote by invalid ballots procured through corruption. I don't know that every single one of those 200,000 ballots is invalid, but what we're averring in our lawsuit against the state, or against these officials working for the state of Florida and ostensibly and basically working for the federal government, is that they don't know either. They had a clear responsibility to understand that each one of the people they handed a ballot to, giving that person and that had a right to vote and that they were eligible and qualified. And there's 205,000 instances where they clearly did not do that, in our estimation. And that is a civil rights abridgment of the highest order in the United States of America.
So you filed the lawsuit. How do you expect the Secretary of State to address this? Because last week during the primary on Tuesday, oddly enough, we had 58 SOE, Supervisor of Election Office websites out of the 67 that we have. And of course, 58 counties out of the 67. Apparently their websites all went down at 7 o'clock. and all came back up at 7:25 or 7:24 p.m. So it was a very strange, there we go again. Whoops, another anomaly. And we saw some significant losses in some areas that frankly it should have been a clean sweep. So it's very troubling to see that this to me appears to be more gaslighting in your face. The SOE offices, supervisor of elections, seem to be somewhat in on the whole thing. And if they're not, perhaps they're not in control of their websites. And maybe this comes straight from the top from Corey Bird's office. I don't know. But it is troubling, and I'm concerned to see how we're going to get him to move off center. How can we expedite this and light a fire under him to want to actually do what's appropriate to clean the voter rolls?
Yeah, well, what you're talking about is extremely troubling because it's not just, a glitch. It's clearly represents a fundamental breach in an element of the voting system, which is the reporting structure from the election management system out to the Secretary of State or the SOE rather websites. That's a breach to the system. It's not a computer glitch. We have to change the way that we frame these issues that we are continually facing. And for some reason, I'm sure it's a coincidence, all of these systems seem to glitch on election day. Now, frankly, the problem that the states have, once again, is that the way that the law views these problems is not to presume innocence. When we're talking about the elections by which our federal government is chosen, and again, also our state representatives in state government, we're talking about it's really like the fabric that holds America together, because if we don't have clear authority over these representatives, then we've lost control of our individual sovereignty. We've lost control of our national sovereignty. We don't know where the control has gone to, but we know it's not in our hands anymore. We're not driving this car. So the issue that we have under the law is that when the system has been breached, when something functions, or let's say malfunctions, we cannot presume innocence. The Department of Justice guidelines for the federal prosecution of election offenses don't presume innocence. They presume harm. And then you have to, the state itself has to be able to prove that there wasn't harm before they can certify. If they certify without proving that, they are lying, which is called perjury.
Mm-hmm.
Perjury in the matter of certification of election returns regarding the representation in Congress, in the U.S. Senate, in the office of the President of the United States of America, and in your state legislatures. This is an attack on our country when officials do this. And I don't care if they're in a red state or a blue state or what have you. What we see across the board, and in answer to your original question, what do we expect Secretary of State Corey Bird to do about this? Nothing, because that's what everyone else does. So the
Right.
mandamus lawsuit is just the first step in the United Sovereign Americans litigation strategy, because there
Right.
has to be accountability for inaction when the fundamental civil right of every American is on the line.
Exactly. And, something else that's troubling that we see repeated over and over again, and it's been brought up numerous times. I think we've been talking about this since the 2020 election, is point 8 in your lawsuit, where you are actually seeking the court's intervention to ensure that all voting systems are compliant with critical infrastructure requirements. It seems to me that that has been brought to the court's attention, not only across the country in numerous states, that these voting systems are not being authenticated properly. They're not following the proper procedures to make sure that their infrastructure itself is up to date. What can you tell us about
Yeah,
that, and how are we allowing this? How is the Supreme Court, or I mean, I don't understand why this hasn't been escalated yet to that point where the Supreme Court is, wait a minute, how do we trust the equipment if we don't know if it's being maintained properly?
Yeah, well, one of the issues that we have with the voting system overall is the idea that you can compartmentalize elements of the system and test them independently of each other. For example, even the accuracy requirement that Congress set appears in the law to, even though it starts as a broad argument that says basically the accuracy of the system is in measuring the intent of the voter on an individual and an aggregate basis. Now, a voter, under definition, legal definition, is someone who has the qualifications to vote. It's not just someone who shows up at the polls and is handed a ballot. That is not, a raccoon shows up at the polls and they get a ballot. They're not a voter, right? Just to use an inane example of someone who's clearly not a valid registrant. So the issue is that they're trying to break this system into pieces and examine them separately and say, well, this piece is accurate and this piece over here is accurate, and they're avoiding the responsibility to reconcile across the systems, and they're avoiding the responsibility to protect the system externally around the entire thing. So let me explain how that works in simple terms. You have a diamond, like a beautiful, precious diamond. It's worth whatever, $10 billion or $1 billion. It's like Austin Powers, right? So you have to protect that diamond against any kind of attack, because all kinds of people are now going to want this diamond, just like the United States of America is precious beyond measure as a unique experiment in individual liberty in in world history.
Right.
So we're going to protect this diamond. Now, if government by consent forms the basis of how this diamond is constructed, that means our elections have to have this protective boundary that completely protects them. There can be, there are like laser beams and sensors and humidity meters and all of this stuff, because nothing can get in there. That's how this is supposed to work. And the entire voting system contains voters, votes, counts, and auditability. That's it. So any kind of part regarding one of those pieces has to meet a standard of law to get inside that boundary. And what we're seeing is that they never want to address the boundary holistically. So we're looking at a voting system that's like a fence without a gate, which is inane. Why would anybody put up a fence without a gate? It serves no purpose now.
Right.
So they're saying, hey, we never have to look at all of these systems in context. We don't have to measure the machines in context with the voter registration and in context with reconciling what the election management systems spit out. We just throw numbers up on a screen and these stupid Americans take our word for it. Well, that's over.
I should hope so. And I'm going to recycle what you said, protect the diamonds, because you're right. This is, we need to, as President Trump said, we need to return the diamonds. But frankly, before we can return them, we should have been protecting them. And that's something we haven't been doing for quite some time. I do like this one point in your lawsuit where you actually sort of take a step back and you say that, while you cannot state with certainty that the 2022 Florida general election produced, quotes, winning candidates who should not have won, you do believe and therefore aver that Florida officials cannot state with certainty that all, quotes, winning candidates received more votes than their losing candidates, because the election itself was compromised by the state's failure to conform to the requirements of federal law designed to ensure reliable election results. So I like this. I like the way this lawsuit is framed, Marley, because you are not necessarily picking apart whether people were phantom voters or too many people, living on an empty lot, or, ballot harvesting or anything like that. You're actually talking about the mechanics and the statutory law that surrounds this, of the election process, in addition to proving that they have legitimate voters on the voter rolls. And that is, again, you can't do that. That should be the state can, and you need to hold them accountable. That is their job, after all.
Correct.
I think that's why you become the Secretary of State. That should be of the utmost importance when you swear the oath, is to make sure that the people voting in your state's elections are technically and legally and lawfully allowed to vote. So I don't see how this doesn't escalate to the Supreme Court. I can see how, the people here and the respondents, Cord Bird, Ashley Moody, and of course, Merrick Garland, they don't want to deal with this, but I can see how this could go all the way to the Supreme Court. So let's get to that level. Let's move forward. Timeline for you to get to the Supreme Court with some of these multiple jurisdiction lawsuits. This will be 4 states now, correct? Ohio, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Maryland.
Maryland. Yes. And we're also, this week, we'll be filing in Texas, Michigan, North Carolina, and Colorado. And we have one other state that's nearly completed as well. So we're just dotting the I's on those 4, and out they go. And one of the reasons that we're filing in so many, well, actually, there's a couple reasons we're filing in so many states, and let's cover them both. One of them is, like you said, diversity of jurisdiction is a real way to force the Supreme Court to address this issue. Diversity of jurisdiction is when 2 federal circuit courts disagree, or district courts disagree on a ruling on a substantially similar matter. So we took this litigation process, this complaint template, and fundamentally filed the same lawsuit in all these states. It's going to end up being 9 states total, probably by the end of next week. I would say that's a reasonable timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're expecting is to win in one place and to fail everywhere else. We know that the states do not want to deal with this hot potato because they're accountable. There's 2 reasons they don't want to deal with it. First of all, if this is true and correct, they can be held accountable for perjury personally, and they can be held accountable for deprivation of civil rights acting under color of law as individual officials. Second, the state itself can be sanctioned in regards to federal apportionment, which is the consequence in the 14th Amendment for a state denying or depriving, denying or abridging in any way the votes of its eligible citizen voters. So this is a massive hot potato, and nobody wants to say, wow, these people are right. But ultimately, we do agree that the Supreme Court will have to admit that this is correct, and we can have a real remedy. United Sovereign Americans, as you noted in the lawsuit, we're not seeking the overturn of any stated outcome or any prior election. We're holding up these results as evidence that these election officials are simply ignoring their duty to provide a constitutionally reliable election. And yes, we do believe the Supreme Court is going to hear this matter ultimately. Obviously, the timeline for that is beyond my capacity to control. We certainly hope to start the litigation process a lot earlier. But as you said, fundraising has been a huge hurdle for us. And we strongly encourage anyone who wants to support a litigation strategy that is fundamentally designed by James Madison. It's not the USA litigation strategy, it's the framers' litigation strategy. It ends with total compliance or total accountability. That's how we know we've completed our job. So, and it operates like one of those Chinese finger traps that the further in you go, the harder it is to get your fingers out without one of those 2 outcomes. So basically, we really need people's help. We strongly, strongly need support to complete these process and to continue filing the lawsuits that will protect the United States of America at the root. We're going to tie ourselves to the rock, the United States Constitution, and not allow the administrative state or the state officials or any other kind of officials seeking to I mean, my goodness. And you pick up that carpet, it's like you can't fit anything more under the carpet, but that's where they want to shove this. It's just wrong in every way.
It is. It 100% is wrong in every way. And I can't encourage enough, my audience to please, there's a QR code right here on the bottom left of the screen. If you just take your cell phone and click that QR code, $5, $10, $50, $500, $5,000, whatever you can donate, whatever you can afford. I 100% endorse and support what United Sovereign Americans is doing here in their efforts to restore election integrity, because frankly, they've taken the partisanship out of this equation, out of the strategy, and they've made it about civil rights. And civil rights applies to left, right, in the middle. It doesn't matter. It's your human right, your civil right. And there is a law that the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, is supposed to uphold your civil rights first and foremost. So when you bring an election integrity lawsuit that talks about how your vote is being replaced by an illegal voter or a dead voter, it doesn't matter left or right. Your vote didn't count. That is a civil rights lawsuit. And I think it's a strategy that is worth supporting. And I'm just, please, my audience, please consider $5 at least. If we had each one of you contribute $5, we'd be able to afford to file another lawsuit, because everybody that's working at United Sovereign Americans is a volunteer, with the exception of the attorneys, and they're doing it for their discounted rate, but they still have to get paid because they're setting aside other work that they could bill out at full hourly wages to support the election integrity efforts by United Sovereign Americans. Marley HORNIK, you are a gem. I've got Harry Howry on Wednesday night. We're doing a live show. We're going to kind of talk about a lot of things. Deep state. We'll talk about your efforts over here, but he's going to bring his former intelligence experience in the NSA. We're going to look at a lot of things that we see going on and the misdirections and try and untangle the weeds there. So I think it could be quite interesting of a conversation. But people need to know this is the caliber of people you surround yourself are bar none the best. And I think in the efforts putting forth to solve this election crisis that we have in our country. So where can folks find you on X, by the way?
You can follow me at Marley HORNIK, or you can also follow at United S American, both of those. And if you find one of them, you'll find the other.
Okay. I just want to get that up so folks can actually see that you are a real person on X, and that they should actually consider, following you here on X, because you're also keeping that information quite up to date with your progress on the efforts you're making. Sometimes it's easier just to track people on X and then bounce over to the website. Your website's great, by the way. It gives a lot of great information. And again, your lawsuit's filed. So folks, buckle up. If you live here in Florida, they're getting squeamish. That is for sure. And I love the fact that all the SOEs that I consider to be the real good candidates here in Florida, we're co-plaintiffs in the lawsuit. You have a great team of people there. And Kathy Chamberlain, bar none, is fantastic. So good job getting that pulled together, Marley. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for your support.
Always, always, always. All right, everybody. We are going to cut this tonight. We've got a lot going on this week. You're going to hear more again from, her partner, Harry Howry. We've got John Mills on deck also. He's doing a lot of election integrity work. He's been quite busy on Substack posting about a lot of information. We're going to talk about Project 2025. We're going to talk a little bit about the people surrounding President Trump, because there seems to be some people that are pretty keen on disinfo and misinfo, and we need to make sure this information is in front of him so that he understands how significant these lawsuits are, and that he's got a great team of people trying to support election integrity. And again, this is a nonpartisan group. These are my words putting this in front of President Trump, not theirs. Let's just be clear. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you again for more Steel News here real soon. Good night. Hi, I'm Ann Vandersteel. I want to talk to you a little bit about your health. Part of my daily routine is to get up in the morning and get a little exercise on. If I have time for a mile or 7, doesn't matter. I get out the door every single day. It's important to get my body moving and get that oxygen flowing through my brains. What is also equally important is what I put in my body after I exercise. I rely on vandersteelhealth.com, where I have a delicious selection of superfoods and other supplements. But first and foremost for me are my superfoods. I have a delicious shake every single day. It is organic, all made in the United States of America, non-GMO, never processed before, dehydrated superfoods. And when they reconstitute with water, milk, or whatever juice you like, it makes a delicious, healthy, plant-based protein supplement. And I say supplement because, frankly, I use this as a meal replacement. This is what's helped me lose the last 20 pounds of COVID. I'm back down to my fighting college weight, fitting in my college clothes, and feeling better than ever. So go to vandersteelhealth.com and get your delicious superfoods. Get on the transformation program with us. It's a 30-day kickoff, and it will get your day starting out great. And watch the weight just fall off. Watch the energy increase, the brain fog lift, and of course the ancillary benefits in your hair, skin, and nails. All these things, you are what you eat. Remember that. Go to vandersteelhealth.com.
My Towels solved the problem that we've all had with towels. You go into the stores and they feel lotiony and soft, but then you get them home and they wind dry you. That's why I made My Towels. They actually work, they're soft, and they absorb. And now I'm excited to announce 2 brand new lines of My Towels. What makes them the best towels ever is they're now made with 100% long staple Shapir cotton. This is a combed ring spun cotton that makes My Towels even softer and more absorbent than ever. And now you get a 6-piece set for an amazing introductory sale price as low as $29.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get My Towels for only $29.98. Or you can get my designer premium line for just $20 more. Either way, you save 50% now on all My Towels. They actually work. What a concept. This offer won't last long, so please order now.